Hey, what's going on, everybody? Long time no post, been busy. Working on some cool projects over here. We'll get into that a little later. I got a very secretive project that I'm working on and waiting for parts. Surprise, surprise. But today's project here is going to be how to do a top end on your KTM 125, the 2003 and up. Same as basic process here for the TC 125 as well, and the 24 gas, which shares the same motor. 23, it's a different one. I am doing this myself with the camera, so I'm going to do some little splices and edits here at the video. But what we're gonna do is basically from start to finish, do a little series on what steps I take to do a top end, and step by step just kind of go through it. Some of it's going to be super easy, simple, familiar and simple, what you're normally used to doing. Some of the electronic stuff is where this is going to change, and we're going to get into that as we go along. But for the most part, what you're going to see next is I'm going to take off the tank, the seat, and the pipe. And I probably will have also drained the coolant. So that's what's going to happen next. When we come back to this, you'll probably see the thing's a bit stripped, but that's what's going to happen. And this shouldn't take that long. Everything's pretty plug and play. There's nothing difficult about removing any of this stuff. The seat comes off with one bolt, and you slide it forward. There's a bolt under the tank and some radiator bolts that hold this shroud on. So very simple, very easy. More coming up. Here we go. And we are back. Did a little bit of work here. I took the two bolts off of each shroud on the inside off. There's remove the seat, obviously. There's a center bolt right in there that came out. Took the seat bolt off, pushed the seat forward, unlocked it, removed the upper left-hand side engine mount to the cylinder, basically a frame mount. Disconnected the fuel line right there. She's just sitting right there. Took the exhaust off this side, and also the frame mount that went to the cylinder to the back of the frame here, and drained the coolant. Cap is a push and counterclockwise. Push down and then turn it counterclockwise. It only has basically it's like a quarter turn thread system. It's kind of hard to push and turn at the same time, so you may have to wait until you remove the tank before you do that. But essentially this thing is drained of radiator fluid. Motor mounts are off. Tank is unsecured. Snap connector is unsecured. Shrouds to the radiators unsecured. I have not unplugged anything electrical. Why? Because anytime you go to work on this bike with stuff that's electrically related, disconnect the battery. Positive first. I got a little magnet on that, so that's not gonna, I'm just gonna put this over here real quick. Same thing with the negative. Just gonna disconnect it real quick. So these just get moved out of the way so they don't touch anything. You can even pull that little rubber boot up on that so it's not going to touch, because we're going to be moving this tank around and you just don't want it to have, accidentally arcing on something while you're working on it. So these will just get tucked out of the way. And you're going to very simply disconnect the fuel pump, which is right here. Pull up on this and then pull back on the connectors, wiggle them, and it just comes out like so. And it's going to stay with the bike. It doesn't get connected to the tank. It's connected to the harness. And this fuel line drops down right there. You can pull that up and out if you want, gently, so it's out of the way, like so. And I won't really be able to do it because I'm a one-man operation here, but this tank is essentially ready to pull off. We're just gonna pry open these shrouds a little bit, pull up in the tank, and the whole tank will come off. I'll put that aside, and then I'll come back and I'll show you what we're gonna start doing with some of the other hoses and electrical lines. But now that the battery's disconnected, you can disconnect the fuel pump, and then we're gonna disconnect the servo for the power valve, cut a couple wire ties, start moving some stuff out of the way. There's also the crank pressure sensor in the back there. You zoom in on that guy right there. We're gonna talk about him. And we'll get going on this. Here we go. All right, we're back. Tank is off. Put over there resting comfortably. Nicey nice. And what we're gonna do is just start to work on this side of the bike first, and remove and unplug some things and get them out of the way, because the idea is to get this area as small as possible, like remove the spark plug, wires, move things out of the way so there's room to work. So I'm gonna kind of do this one-handed, but I just come in here and give this a little wiggle pull on the spark plug. That comes up. I wanna get this high and out of the way so we can just kind of tuck this up here so it doesn't really do anything. It's out of the way. There's a engine temperature sensor, which monitors your coolant. That is right here. This rubber boot is like a little protector. You're just gonna slide that off and up. And there's a little connector there. And that plugs into a housing, and it's a probe that passes into the backside of the housing and monitors your coolant temperature. In this connector, you want to push down on the back tab and then pull it backwards and wiggle, and it comes right off. Same thing with this. We're just going to get this up and out of the way. Sorry if this camera work is not the best. It's literally me with my iPhone. I'm just going to kind of tuck that out of the way. And we can get to the spark plug now. I'm just going to crack it loose. That's all that really needs. That doesn't need to be crazy tight. We're just going to get this out of the way to make things smaller and a little more room. And we're going to just place that there. Now, for the time being, I actually probably should have had this ahead of time. I like to put paper towels in places that debris and things can end up in as you work. Although this bike's been pressure washed and stuff, you just never know. This is coming off anyway. This is just literally to keep things from falling down inside it. This is how I do it anyhow. There is a crankcase pressure sensor right here. And this tab is a pull up tab. So this is not going to be pinched down. It's going to be pulled, kind of hard to do this with one hand, but it's going to get pulled up and then backing out. And this little guy, it's wired into the harness. You can just put this out of the way for now. Just tuck it over here. See, as we go along, we're just trying to get like all this stuff away so we can deal with this, because that might be a little bit of a pain in the butt to get off. And so there's some snips here. I mean, not some snips, some wire ties I put on. Get those out of the way. Be careful not to obviously cut the electrical. Okay, we're gonna just get rid of this guy too. Make sure I'm not cutting anything. She's gone. Okay, now we're in business. We're going to take this one bolt out, and all that's really gonna do is take this cover off. There she is. And we'll do a little wiggle pull. That just comes right out. That is your servo. That is an electronically controlled power valve actuator. Major important that I say this. Again, that anytime you go to work on this bike, disconnect the battery, okay? When you go to do a top end, and you don't have to, leave the servo on the bike. There is a way to get in there with a wrench. It's gonna be tight, but We want to try to leave this connected at any and all costs because it's a little bit of a process to get it back on and lined up. This little guy down here pulls down. This is super hard to do one-handed. It's going to be a bit of a pain in the butt. Yep, so you just pull down on that little white piece and you're going to get this guy popped out. And again, we're going to just put him way out of the way up here. Get rid of him up here. He doesn't need to really be involved in anything we're doing. So there's one more over here. I'm going to snip this out of the way. That's the battery line. It's not super related to anything anymore because the battery's disconnected, but we're going to cut that as well. We can always put zip ties on later. Okay, now you see what we got going on here with like a nice big engine, exposed engine. All these sensor lines are way out of the way. Battery's disconnected. We're not worried about anything bad happening. We're just going to kind of, let's put a little bit of a pain in the butt. So let me look on the other side here and see if we're missing anything. We're just going to walk over here. No, we're good. What I'm going to do now is disconnect those hoses with the thermostat housing. Actually, this is a deleted thermostat housing where normally it would be a thermostat housing. Brought to you by Moto Hose. It is deleted thermostat. But I am going to remove these hoses because this is not coming off without those guys out of the way. And once that happens, I'll come back and we'll do a little cylinder lift off and show you how that's done too. All right, be back in a minute. All right, everything is pretty much moved out of the way here. I'm just, all the hoses are off. They're down there waiting. And we've got a nice clean engine bay now. What I'm going to do while this is still sitting here is just crack loose in opposing star pattern, crack loose the head bolts. Just give those a little undo. Not all the way, but you want to go opposing. And the reason I'm doing this is because once I get this cylinder off, it might be super hard to get them off. So I'm just basically, now that I've loosened them, those will come off pretty easily in a couple minutes. I'm just going over those one more time. So those are cracked loose. That's pretty much the end of that. That's a 10 millimeter, by the way. The cylinder stud nuts are 12. And all we're gonna do right now, if you look, this is, you gotta kind of get it way in there. I'm using a stubby 12. Crack that loose. Gotta kind of wiggle it out. Again, do this in the opposing manner. This one might need to be ground a little bit. I'm just gonna crack that loose. Might have to grind that wrench. This doesn't fit. Same thing again, crack this loose. She's loose. Back to the front one here, crack it loose. Now that these are all loose, keep the wrench handy in case it feels like it gets snug, but I'm gonna just basically take these all off, put them aside. That is a 12. Just gonna put these down here. Sorry, this thing doesn't focus amazing. Okay. Same thing on this side. And there's gonna be an awful lot of talk about, yeah, see that one got a little snug. My wrench. There's gonna be an awful lot of talk about when you go to put the cylinder back on, is it gonna be, are you gonna hone it? Are you gonna do this? I mean, I'm not gonna get into the deep sort of process. This is just more of a tutorial That one's super loose, so this is, you can't really see too well in there. I'm just gonna spin that off. And there she's off. Super deep into the process of, should I hone it? Should I break the glue? There's so many different ways to skin a cat. This is more just the mechanical side of how to disassemble this whole thing, take it all apart, and put it back together with the setup that's required. That's a whole nother topic of conversation for later that we'll do. So next thing I'm gonna go do is get a little rubber mallet. I don't know how tight this thing is on here. It's probably on there, still stuck pretty tight. So I'm gonna get a rubber mallet and come back in a second and show you what it looks like when we go to actually pop this thing off. And back in a second. All right, and we're back. I got my rubber mallet. This is not a, you know, whack it to the side, You don't want to damage this thing. This thing's probably just sitting there, taut down from its being tightened up. I haven't touched it. I'm just gonna give this a little tap over here, up, not on the head, right here. See what happens. Let me just do this now. Okay, so that was super loose. It didn't even hardly require anything. Same thing on this side. You don't want to, if you have to hit it, you know, you could hit it right here or over here. Just be careful not to hit bolts and things. We're just gonna, so this thing's rocking. You can see there's a gap in here. So this thing should slide off pretty easily. And all these little, those are the exhaust springs. I'm gonna get those out of the way. I'm gonna go around here and get my paper towels ready. I'm just gonna one-hand this thing. I'm gonna just pull up on this thing and see what happens. Everything should come right out. We're gonna give that a little wiggle pull. Yep, as you can see, there's the piston. Okay, I'm gonna try to angle this like this with my knees. Why didn't I think of that an hour ago? I'm gonna pull the crank down in rotation so the cylinder will have a little more room to move out of the way. And that's not working at all. Go down. There it is. So now I'm just gonna force the crank down with my hand. That was super easy. And I'm just gonna pull the cylinder out of the way. Okay. I'll lay that there. And let's see what this looks like in here. First glimpse. Oh boy. Ooh. She looks pretty good, actually. There's a little wear on the back. It's got like 7 hours on it. That's the top. The thing I'm really looking for is detonation on the side of this thing. I'll have to pull this piston off, what obviously I'm going to do. See if I can find any sign of detonation on here. It's got like 7 hours, something like that, on it. I'm just gonna spin this crank over if I can. You know what it is? It's a big magnet on the other side of this. It's so hard to spin around. Yeah, she's hard. But there's a lot of oil over everything. That looks good. Everything's got a film on it, which is good. Hooray for Motul 800. That's the bee's knees when it comes to synthetic, I'll tell you that. High flash point. This is proof right here. There's like hardly any ring wear, no blow by. Little bit of blow by. You can see that. I mean, it is ever so slight. We're gonna go on this side. I'm excited, man. This thing came out. Yeah, a little bit in the back of the piston skirt, you can see some wear. And during this video too, I'm gonna obviously be pulling this and we're gonna look at this piston on the bench under a light. But she's looking good, man. I'm actually encouraged. This thing doesn't, you just never know. Yeah, a little bit of wear back there. Nothing major. Nothing major at all. Big thing right now, here's another step I do, is when you pull this apart and you go to work on the cylinder or whatever else you're gonna do, we're gonna put paper towels under here to keep things from falling down into the crank. That is a an area you don't want to drop things in, because then you're going to pull the motor and split the cases. You happen to drop something down there. To make this easier in hindsight, I'd probably, you know what, I'm doing it now. I'm doing it. I'm not holding back anything. I'm gonna station this just so. This is all coming off. This is super not professional camera work here. Well, you'll see what I mean when this cover comes off. One more. All right, now this thing, put that there. There's a huge magnet behind here. So it's not your typical cover. That just is a cover. There's a magnet, so this thing's super hard to pull off. It's like, you feel like, what the heck, is there still bolts holding this together? No, it's magnetism, and if you, almost, there it comes, big old magnet. But now that this is out of the way, I'm gonna snip these two little guys here. I don't want them anymore. That's going to be put out of the way. Over here. This will turn over super easy now. The angle. Super easy. It's just with that magnet on there, it's super hard. And that little bracket bugger, if you watch my other videos, that's the little guy that caused a lot of problems for a $4 part. But yeah, man, I'm encouraged. This piston looks killer. Surprised. I thought it was going to look way worse than that. This thing's been flogged. So, all right, more coming up soon. Stay tuned. Part 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know how long this is going to take me, but we're going to probably look at the cylinder next. Go look at that thing under the light. Roger. Peace.